I'm just wondering, since we have this not too young to run bill, is it that, would it be out of place if we say they can't leverage on that as well? That's a point that they can leverage on, isn't it?
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, remember what the president said when he was signing the not too young to run bill.
I thought he was just joking.
It's a very expensive joke that they should not interfere right now.
Later.
They should wait 2023. And they took it with smiles and all that. But quite sincerely, we have a problem on our hands in terms of succession to political office, political power. The young people seem primed to take a claim for high political office. But we have agreed here at this forum that they don't have what it takes yet to be a contending force. But my hunch is that by 2023, they will have been well prepared, adequately prepared to take the oldies on. It's not their time now. That's my hunch. But the next time around, I hope there will be many active young voices, female voices, like what has happened, as I said, in the U.S. Congress. You have women now presiding, the Speaker of the House, and then such a wide representation from the female folk in the United States of America. I don't see why that should not happen here. Somebody mentioned Angela Merkel. Angela Merkel has a PhD in physical chemistry. Okay, and that's why some of us could not understand why we would say that our own wives should belong to the other room. Before somebody with a PhD in physical chemistry, and you see one of the longest standing leaders in Europe, and she has a lot of clout and respect. I don't see why Nigerians can't project, say, Anibukun Awoshika, or even Professor Shonaya. I met her before the elections, and she told me she went to Cornell. So Ivy League PhD, professor in Ife, and she went to run for president, but she was just thrown aside as a non-event. I'm sure the women can come up with more credible candidates that can stand their own against male competition.
Well, sorry, I want to take this. I don't know if Dr. Abdul can take this one. I'm sure he can. Between now and 2023 is 4 years. Is there anything the youth need to do now, Dr. Abdul? So, because most politicians, we only hear them once every 4 years. And if we can move away from that, I don't know, what do you think they need to do? Most times we hear politicians in the build-up to the election, and then after the elections, there's some rabble-rousing, and then we don't hear them anymore. What do the youth need to do if they have to hold a high stake in the elections of 2023?
Is to actually start immediately after this election. Election generally is a circle. The end of one is the beginning of the next. Phase, and therefore young people need to identify their issues and mobilize and galvanize the public around those issues, and that's very key. Yes, not necessarily. Young people don't necessarily have to be president. That shouldn't be the focus, but it doesn't stop. People can mobilize for that. But there are strategic positions that young people can actually occupy. Unfortunately, our system has totally destroyed the local government system, which ordinarily have been, particularly in the northern part of the country, more like an exclusive preserve for younger people. Local government system have practically collapsed. Will have been a better training grounds for this. But there are strategic positions like governorship, like state assembly, like the National Assembly. And even for the presidency, because in most of the countries we are giving as example, whether it is in Canada or Austria or France, they were actually, the young people's emergence was a product of mass movement. So they were moving around a particular political convention or against a particular tradition. and people say we need something different. And the process threw out a young person who drove that. And in most cases, they even emerge outside the mainstream political party. The Macron's party was actually formed just for the purpose of running that elections. So this is how movements operate. The movement comes, the mass come first, and then it throws out a leadership. So I think we need to invest in that, and that means that they have to associate and connect themselves more with national issues and national concern, and identify those issues that can galvanize the country towards that direction.
I don't know if Ms. Idayat can also take that on, especially talking about the gender angle of it. You've mentioned the cultural sentiment or cultural influences that come to play at times. How do we rise above that and build a better nation together come the next election cycle?
It's about changing the mindset. It's about changing the mindset. We need everybody to take this on collectively. So it begins with you and I, and changing our mindset, understanding the role women play in the house and the better role they play. They play even in politics, mostly behind the scene. Like the Professor Yebode already spoke about it. There are many women in Nigeria at all levels, known and unknown, who have social capital that they could build upon. And the march starts immediately after the elections, because the election is a circle and it should actually be taken as a circle henceforth. How do we get the law passed? How do we get affirmative action? Because for women issues, until we have affirmative action, we cannot guarantee that women representation in politics is a given. Then how do we get the National Action Plan implemented? In the previous administration, we had up to the prescribed 30%, even more than 33%. But in this administration, of course, it keeps oscillating from 1999 till date, really. But it's very, very important that in this present administration, the women must lobby. With the incoming administration, they must lobby assiduously to be appointed into office as a beginning to 2023. So if they get all these appointments at the state level, at the national level, as a collective, it is easier to galvanize. Then building capacity is also very important, because when you have women, particularly the ones that are in political parties, and you bring them forth, also the men do believe that maybe they are not as capable as they should be, and encouraging more capable women to get involved in politics instead of this fear that politics is a dirty game, politics is about violence, unless there is a complete mindset, both religious, both cultural-wise, both on what politics really is also all about, which is about delivery of public goods and services. Then, without being pessimistic, it might actually be very difficult for us to get there. So we have to do all these things together, not exclusive of one.
Okay, let's see if we could turn attention to the National Assembly election, because I'm not sure that there usually is a lot of focus in terms of who emerges, how they emerge. We have heard people who have suggested that maybe the country doesn't pay that much of an attention to it, such that when they get in there, then we'll start hearing some complaint or the other. There seems to be a lot of focus on the presidential election and the governorship elections. But for the National Assembly, exactly, because they are the check and balance for the executive at both ends. But first of all, do you agree with that notion that we haven't paid as much attention as we ought to?
Yeah, we haven't. We haven't. And I think that's why I hear Mrs. Hassan saying about upset, because I think we're going to see upset in that direction more this year, because people are getting to know that there's need to pay attention in to that sector, and given the fact that the abysmal performance of the past our Houses of Assembly, National Assembly, or whatever, State of Assembly, there's going to be some upset. And that's why I think that we need to pay more attention to the fact that the caliber of people that we put there would ultimately affect the quality of governance. because we have a tripartite system, the judiciary, the legislature, and the executive. So if you don't have the right candidates or right people at that assembly, whether at the state level or at the federal level, you can be sure that we are not going to have a robust development that will galvanize us to where we are expecting to be.
I think